Hello, and welcome to Building an ERD with Microsoft Visio. My name is Bob Niels. Prior to listening to this video, it's very important that you have already downloaded and installed Microsoft Visio on your computer. If you haven't done that yet, please stop this video now and go back and get that taken care of. During this video, we're going to go through some demonstrations on Microsoft Visio, and it'll be good that you have it on your computer and you can follow along. With that, if you have Microsoft Visio and you have it all fired up and ready to go, let's continue. Again, in this course, our goal is going to be to develop entity relationship diagrams using Microsoft Visio as part of our database design phase. With that said, let's make sure we understand what an entity relationship diagram is. It's a graphical representation of a database design that shows the relationship between people, object, places, concepts, events, things, items, and so on. Basically the same concept of what an entity was in our previous videos. This illustration will be a nice way to show the relationships without having to add a bunch of words and getting it all pretty busy, if you will. I think it will help you understand what you're trying to do a little bit more. And I think it will also help your instructors to ensure that they feel good that you have a decent understanding of the concepts of what we're trying to accomplish here. All right, so with that, let's go ahead, let's go ahead and get into Microsoft Visio and start doing this, okay? All right, with that said, most of you, when you bring up Microsoft Visio, should see a screen that similarly looks like this. If it doesn't, no worries. You may not have all these little templates sitting there, but you should have at least two of them. I would say basic diagrams and blank drawing. Down here is the template that we're going to be using to create a ERD in Visio. However, feel free to go ahead and click that if you like, but for sake of consistency, I'm going to start with a blank drawing, and then once we get in there, we'll go ahead and pick the crow's foot template to do our drawing with. Be a little bit more consistent for those who may not have that particular screen. All right, here we are now with our blank canvas. And so the first thing we want to do to prepare to start drawing is go over to More Shapes, do a left click, and come down to Software and Database. Click on Database, and then Crow's Foot Database Notation is what we're looking for. It should get a check mark right there, and you can kind of click off of it, and the menu will go away. With that, all the little different, when we say notations, will pop up as it relates to Crow's Foot Database Notation, which is what we're going to use as we build our ERDs. The second thing we're going to do is I want to change the orientation of this paper. Right now you see it's in portrait. I want to go ahead and change the orientation to landscape. It kind of lends itself a little bit better in developing, I should say, ERDs. Okay, I'm going to make this just a tight bit bigger. Right now I have it at 44, so 55 should work pretty well. Okay, so last week what we did, for sake of an example, we developed a database that dealt with students, courses, and instructors. I think hopefully you remember that. And if you recall, we went all the way through the process of defining the purpose of our database, determined the requirements for the database. Based upon that, we got all the nouns out of there to come up with our initial entity list. We pared that down based upon some rules, and then ended up with our final entity list. And then finally, what we did is we looked at those entities and determined the relationships. Again, our goal here now is to illustrate those relationships so everybody understands. All right, so how do we do this? It's really simple. For the most part, we're going to come over to entity. We'll highlight entity here. Just put our cursor over the word entity. Do a left click, okay, hold it down, and then drag it over. Basically a drag and drop. We're going to do that for every entity that's been defined in our database. So in this case, we have 3 of them. So we have one. We'll go ahead and add our second one. And finally, our third one, which would be used for instructors later on. So there you go. Pretty simple, huh? And it actually is a very easy tool to use. Now, what we want to do is you see within each of these entity boxes a few things. Number one is entity name. We're going to change that to an actual name of our entities. Attributes, which we'll deal with in uh, other videos this week when we talk about what attributes are. And you'll see that word, the little box there with the letters PK in it. That stands for primary key. We also are going to talk about that this week, and we'll define what the primary key is of each entity. Okay? But for this particular video, all we're going to do is name our entities. Okay? So to do that, we'll just double click on entity name, and you'll see that it basically highlights, and we'll start typing in the actual names of our entities that we've already derived. So students, right here will be courses. Let's make sure that whole thing, there it goes, courses. And finally, we're going to come down to here, and we'll put in instructors. All right, got it? I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit smaller again so we can see everything. So there we go. It's a little too small. There we go. It's a little bit better. Okay? So now that we have that, what we need to do is provide the, what do you want to say, the notation again that actually defines the relationships between these entities. That's what the whole thing's about. If we remember, once again, our relationships between students and courses was many to many, which meant for every student, they could take many courses, and for every course, there could be many students. So we need to provide the notation that actually that states that. And we do that by utilizing this little relationship piece right here. I'm just going to bring this over for the time being. I want to make this a little bit bigger here, and so we can focus on it. And kind of look at what this line's actually doing. There's a default that's being provided here, and we can change it based upon what the actual relationships are. Now, how the relationship works is that on every end, it's based on what the relationship is from the other entity, if you will. For instance, what this would be saying is whatever entity is here, we would say, has a many relationship to here. And then whatever entity is here has a one and only one relationship to here. That's what those two slashes mean, one and only one. Does that make sense? All right. So what we want to have as a notation between students and courses that says for every student, they must take at least one or more courses. And for every courses, there must be one or more students. That's what we want to get to. So what we want to do is get this line, if you will, this relationship line, to reflect that. To do such a thing, we go ahead and highlight it, do a right click. There you go. And we're going to deal with these two selections within this menu. The set begin symbol, which is basically the left side of the line, and the set end symbol, which is the right side of the line. What I said before is, so in this case, we're looking at how courses relate to students. So for every course, there must be one or more students. So literally all we want to do, this says 0 or more, we want to say 1 or more. We would click this, do a left click on that, and now if you look at it, it will reflect that. The crow's feet basically says, that's many, 1 in there, see that 1, so it must have at least have 1 or more is what that's stating. Our relationship from students to courses is the same thing, 1 or more. So in this case, once again, we'll go ahead, highlight it, bring up the menu, go to the end symbol, and say 1 or more. There you go. Okay, pretty simple. Now the trick is getting this line up here between these two guys. We'll go ahead and plop this here. I'll make this a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to go ahead and drag this over, and it kind of works for us in a way. Not perfect, but pretty darn close. Okay, so let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger again, and you can see what this notation is saying, that there's for every student, they must have 1 or more courses, and for every course, there must be 1 or more students. Pretty cool? I hope so. All right, so the next one we need to do is for instructors. Once again, I want to drag a relationship line here. And if you recall what this stated was, is that for every course, there must be one and only one instructor, okay? And then for every instructor, they can teach 0 or more courses per semester. The instructors don't have to teach a course, but they can still be in our database. So with that said, this thing's almost ready for us, but let's just analyze this one more time. So to go from the courses to the um, instructors table, we want to say one and only one. Well, it's already set to that, and that's where those two lines come into play at. And then if we want it to, at the beginning one, where it says the instructors, I should say, only, I'm sorry, to teach 0 courses or more courses, and that's the default also. So this line is already set up for this particular situation, which is beautiful. We'll come up here, we'll put it right there, and I'll drag this down. It should straighten it up for us nicely. And then there we go. And we now have our first entity relationship. Okay, that wasn't too awfully hard. Let me make that a little bigger, sorry. Too awfully hard to actually create, yet it says a lot, doesn't it? That old saying, that old poem, the picture paints 1,000 words. Right here it does it without having to get too wordy. What's really nice about this is when we get to have more and more entities within our database design, drawing this up versus all these words and all these pages, one quick look and feel, you can actually get a nice idea of what your database is actually doing. And then you can start building it accordingly. What do you think? All right. Last thing you're going to do is go ahead and save this. You'll save file. Okay. And you save or save as, whatever you want to do. Put it to wherever you're going to put it at. I'm going to put it in a file folder I know of. And as you can see, I'll give it a decent name. What you should do based on your assignments or whatever you're working on, give it a meaningful name. So if this is assignment 6 or assignment 7, say that. Say this is assignment whatever it is for us, so the instructors know what you're doing. And as you can see, it's going to add a .vsdx, which is the Visio's extension. All right, and then go ahead and save that, and then you will upload that for your assignments. And that's all there is to it. So it really isn't any harder than that. And I think, it's going to be a nice tool for you to use. Like I did last week, I provided a little cheat sheet under entity relationship diagrams under resources in week 2, and I also moved that to week 3. The little cheat sheet actually provides you a little of the examples of the notation on that relationship line and what it actually means. But for the most part, we sort of covered them all already. All right? So with that said, it's your turn to try.